Part two of the Celebration Bowl preview. This time we're looking at Jackson State, and you can't break down the Tigers without Mr. 1400 himself, Ken Clark. Oh yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College to get $20 off your first purchase. It's the Celebration Bowl preview part two. Yesterday, we had Kobe joining the show to break down his South Carolina State Bulldogs. Today, we have Ken Clark, Mr. 1400 himself, to talk about Jackson State. We're going to follow that same blueprint. Look at the team, look at the coach, look at the opponent. So without further ado, let's talk to Brother Ken. And I have Ken Clark here with me, Mr. 1400 himself. Man, you done been in Atlanta 3 out of the last 4 years. You probably got a favorite hotel, a favorite restaurant, a routine by now. You know Atlanta like you know Jackson.
Yeah, actually, I would say 4 out of 4. And I'm gonna tell you why. We did MEAC SWAC Challenge last year. So we got South Carolina State to open the season, and I was here. But I can maneuver around Atlanta pretty good now.
Man, you might as well go get your apartment in Atlanta as much as you're there. But let's look at them Jackson State Tigers. Jacobian Morgan went down with injury in the SWAC championship game. Zy McDonald came out to relieve him and took JSU to another SWAC championship. Is there a chance that if Jacobian Morgan is not healthy, that he may still not be the starter?
I would say that's probably a slim chance. And of course, I'm not speaking on behalf of the coaches. I just think that being around our coach, Coach T.C. Taylor, and the quarterback coach, Coach Rip Kirk, I think you kind of somewhat old school philosophy still. You know, you roll with who got you there. You know, he got banged up. That's the beautiful thing about this team. When you talk about the Jackson State, the 2024 JSU roster, you're looking at depth. We had a chance to sit down with Coach Taylor on last night, and we spoke a little bit to him about the depth that he's built this roster. We've saw injury throughout the season. The wide receiver room got decimated with injuries. You know, your top 4 on your depth chart, give or take. I wouldn't say top 4. I would just say 4 starters, starter level talent goes down in the wide receiver room, and you've seen us kind of continue to rock on and not really miss a beat. Not many HBCU teams can do that. So when you the quarterback room, you've seen the likes of Cam McCoy starting some at the beginning of the season. You've seen him Jacobian start some, and then you see us roll with Jacobian. But many forgot about number 3, Zy McDonald, who was also a 3-star young man who committed to UL out of high school. He entered the transfer portal to come back home. Really good, talented kid. I mean, he dealt with a few injuries here and there, kind of with some hamstring tightness here and there, also in the spring. And I think he was dealing with a shoulder injury. So he was fully healthy and ready to roll. But Zy also fit. I asked a specific question last night sitting out with Coach Taylor here in Atlanta at the hotel. I asked him, when we saw Zy run out there, we see number 3, and we're thinking number 6 would go in when Jacobian goes down, because that's what we've seen throughout the season. But I wanted to know, Coach, what kind of went into the mindset with that? And his answer was simply put that Zy's talent, his skill set fit what we were trying to do. And also, they felt like it would be more of a disadvantage to the Southern defense, who was playing super aggressive off the defensive line. So having a quarterback that can elude the pass rush, the likes of Kelby Givens and the other talented young men on the Southern defense, Coach went with Zy, and he answered the call. He was ready to roll, and that's what you saw. So, but with that being said, you get to the Celebration Bowl. I kind of like Jacobian as the starter, as being healthy. All quarterbacks are healthy and ready to roll. But with that being said, if there is some struggles there, you still have that, that Swiss Army knife, and you have that Billy Club that you can go to, if you have to go into your quarterback depth. So that's kind of the philosophy. Keep it the same. Let's roll with who got us there. But keep in mind, prior to him going down, we haven't seen a loss. Listen to this. Jacobian Morgan has not lost a game as a starter after the Grambling game. He didn't start that game. Cam McCoy started that game. He came in relief duty. So we haven't lost a game. After the Grambling game, coach names Jacobian Morgan the starter, and he has not lost a game all season. So I understand Zy had a great game, and he's still there. We can go to him if we need to. But I'm not the one making that decision. At the same time, I think based off of what I can pick up and gather from the coaches, that 15 is probably going to be the starter. And I think the chances of seeing Zy roll out there is going to be a little bit on the lesser side than I would say. Now, if he decided to do that, I don't think Tiger Nation would have a problem, because at the end of the day, all we want to do is have more points than South Carolina State.
Facts. And, one of the big reasons that you'll be able to do that is the linebacking duo, right? Because you got to stop South Carolina State from putting up points, and we'll get into what it takes to stop the Bulldogs. But I feel like that tandem of Pulliam and Taylor doesn't get the shine that it deserves, in my opinion.
I think Ashton Taylor and Reid Pulliam are two of the best duos. I like the way Coach Quinn and his staff, Coach Chris Orr, we sub a lot, Darrion. I mean, I think Jackson State probably subs more than any other HBCU team in the country. If you watch the games, we rotate a lot of players in and out. Austin Evans coming to us from Bryant had a stellar year. You got Jaden Ward that came to us from Northwestern State, who's also a thumper. But Ashton Taylor and Reid Pulliam are studs. And I've had, I'll just say this. We'll do everything we can from our, from a alum standpoint, collective standpoint, to make sure that we keep those two in Jackson State Tiger uniforms, man. So sometimes when you're playing with so much talent and you're subbing as much as you have seen, the stats get a little skewed. They're spread evenly. And that's what tends to happen. Anytime you see 7 and you see 30 out there, hey man, we're gonna be solid on the back end, actually in the middle, second level.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that tandem a lot. If you're looking at this game, before we get to the start of the show, if you're looking at this game, where do you feel like Jackson State has the biggest advantage over South Carolina State?
Physicality. I think this team here, in my opinion, I'm not saying that South Carolina State is not physical. I think this is more of a finesse style, run and shoot style offense, fast pace, a lot of small wide receivers that, you got a talented quarterback that's getting the ball out in about 2 to 3 seconds every snap. High-powered offense. That's usually not what you think about when you think about a South Carolina State. You're usually thinking about that defense, man. And they got some studs over there on the defensive side of the ball, but I think the edge to us in this game is to play more of a rugged, bruising, physical, impose our physicality on them in the trench play. Our defensive line and offensive line, I'm going to give us the edge at that. The reality of the matter is our O-line has to slow down their pass rush and open up holes for the best running back in college football, in my opinion, or you can say FCS, HBCU, Mr. Irv Mulligan himself. And the defensive line has to be able to take away everything at the point of attack and make things for Eric Phoenix to be super uncomfortable. If he gets to that third. So in my studying and watching film of him in South Carolina State this season, just pay attention to what happens between the 2-second mark and the 3-second or 4-second mark. That's when things tend to break down for them. They are extremely explosive in the first 2 right at 3 seconds. Not saying that they're not, they haven't had some success beyond the 3-second count with the quarterback having the ball in his hands. But the reality of what they try to do is to take away your defensive line. If you're getting the ball out in 2 seconds, unless you just got a sorry offensive line that's opening the hole like Willie Beeman on any given Sunday, you know what I'm saying? You really can't get to the quarterback with a solid offensive line. They got a really good team, but that's my opinion based off what I see is we're going to have to out physical them. We're not going to get into no track race. I don't think we'll win that game. But if we physical them and we create those holes, I think it'll be a long day for them.
And you speak about creating the holes. You speak about Irv Mulligan. He is the guy, right? I had Kobe on here yesterday from Blitz City. We spoke about Mulligan. He is one of the guys. Actually, to me, he is the guy that propels this team. What improvements? What improvements have you seen in Irv Mulligan from his first year in Jackson to his second year?
I would say number one, he's healthy. He went down last year against Alabama State, had a lingering ankle injury, finally got healthy. He didn't make his debut until the third game of the season against Southern. But his leadership, he's a vocal leader. He's a passionate player. He runs hard. He plays hard. But I think the physical tools, you saw that. You saw what you saw on the field last year in a very capsulated version of Irv Mulligan. You've seen much of that same running back on the field. Even when you go back to his days at Wofford, he was still a violent runner that ran hard like a Marion Barber type, Marshawn Lynch type running back, that type of style. But when he's healthy and he's accepting the coaching, new running back Coach Eric Gallen comes into us and has done a marvelous job with the running back room that's loaded and that's filled with depth. And you got young guys coming up. Irv is taking on the leadership role and has been a very, very, very vocal leader and has been a great extension of the coaches and helping keep that room intact and also going out there and being a great teammate. That's the thing that you see. That's the part that being close enough to see it. If you're just watching football, you probably won't capture that. But I would just say those are the two things that I'm most proud of Irv. Irv is a brand ambassador for our for KC 1400 Media Group, and we're proud that he represents the brand. And man, just his leadership on and off the field, his maturation, and his ability to accept coaching. And if you make a mistake, look, it get a little spicy at times, but he'll come back and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm good. We good. Let's roll." So that's Irv Mulligan. You get the total package. Irv is a pro, man. One of the best running backs we've had at Jackson State in quite a while.
Yeah, no, I love Irvin. And you mentioned the lingering ankle injury from last year. I could see that because I don't know if he's just ripping off more big carries, but it feels like it's another level of explosiveness when he gets into the open field in this season. So I could definitely see that. Let's move into the leader of this team, T.C. Taylor, right? This is his second year, and I want to look at not only the improvements of Mulligan from year 1 to 2, but also some of the improvements and changes that T.C. Taylor has made as a head coach in year 1 to year 2 as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account today. Matter of fact, I know all the technological advances that we have today. You can swipe up on me on YouTube. You'll have me right there in the right corner, left corner, whichever one you want to have me at. You can still listen and watch me as you follow these instructions. Go to your Google Play or your App Store. Download the app. Game Time. Create an account as we're talking. It doesn't take any time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College whenever you make your first purchase. Maybe you just want to go do something. You don't know what you want to do yet, but you know that you want to do something. I suggest you go to Game Time because they have suggestions and they have a multitude of different events for you to go ahead and partake in. So you go to the Game Time app, download the app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College to get $20 off your first purchase, whether you're going to the circus, to a concert, to a sporting event, or maybe you just want to go to a play and relax and enjoy yourself. Go to gametime.com or download the Game Time app today and take advantage of it ASAP. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked on College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, going over the biggest stories in the FBS world. Right now, we're looking at the Celebration Bowl, our biggest event of the year. I have Ken Clark, Mr. 1400 himself here to break down Jackson State. When you're looking at T.C. Taylor, he's been a part of the staff for some years, but this is his
Yes.
second year as a head coach. What
Mm.
difference have you seen in the culture between year one and year two under TC Taylor?
Year one was challenging because Coach Taylor, we talked about this last night. I remember being here and seeing after we lost that game. I want to say it was December 17th, 2022. When they get back to the school, it's now TC Taylor time. Out goes our previous coach, Coach Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and now it's his turn. It's his time, and he didn't have a lot to work with when he got started. He had to literally hire just about everything, man. He needed a
Yeah.
football ops, he needed a trainer, he needed a strength and conditioning coach, and he needed a staff. And we got all the way down to about 29 players out of the 100 plus players that was playing on that roster under Coach Prime. Coach was trying to assemble a foundation for a program. But even in that effort, he brought in some really good coaches, and he took more of a hands-off type approach. He went with more personable relationships, people he knew in the business, and the likes of Jonathan Bradley, Coach Bradley, likes of Coach Jason Anyubuwaga, the likes of Coach Tyquan Hammock and Coach Lorenzo Quinn, and the list goes on and on. How Coach Quinn Billerman, who was played quarterback for Coach T.C. Taylor over at North Carolina Central when he was on staff with head coach Jerry Mack, and he was the quarterback's coach. And after year one, we finished 7-4. Coach and I sat down in December, and we were doing Tiger Talk interviews. We were doing some recruit interviews during their visits. And he just talked about wanting to get more out of the wide receiver room. He made a change at the wide receiver coach position. He decided to not hire a offensive coordinator when Coach Mo Harris went over to Auburn. So he accepted. He wanted to be more hands-on and have more control over the offense. So he decided to take that under his wing. So in order to allow him to have more X's and O's, I would say fluidity within his program, he elevated Coach Otis Riley to the general manager role, as well as he's still doing tight ends and whatnot. Bring in the likes of Coach Eric Gallen at the running back coach position, which we did have a really good running backs coach on Coach Brandon Morgan. Excuse me. Brandon Morgan moves over and take on recruiting, becomes a recruiting coordinator. Brings in Coach Vincent Marshall from Norfolk as our wide receivers coach. He promotes Coach Rip Kirk to quarterback coach. He promotes Coach Lorenzo Quinn to DB coach. Coach Mario Magana gets elevated to DB coach. You also bring in Coach Manny Ramirez from that flag that's behind your head, Coach, Texas Southern, one of the best offensive line coaches in the conference, if not the best. He was the best because he led the conference in rushing year in and year out. Bring in a spark plug and a JSU alum, Coach Javancy Jones, who comes in and takes over. And I'm setting up. I have a reason for why I wanted to go through all of that. The biggest difference in year one and year two is the closeness. It feels like a brotherhood in that building, man. It feels like friends that are hanging out, that love each other, that work, that love to work around each other. There's no tension. I'm telling you, bro. I've been around, and I'm not denigrating or saying anything negative. It's just that year one, it was just it was tough, man. We was going through our emotions of a breakup, yet at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Yet at the same time, you got a lot of coaches that you don't really know, and some were inviting, some were a bit, resistant to whatever. And it just didn't feel natural in the room for someone that was just kind of being a part of this thing. But now you go in there and you see that, and they just look more. He looks more happy now. He looks more settled now. You know what I mean? And just more of a player's coach. I've seen growth within him. But I asked him a question, Darrion. I said, Coach, you took on play calling duties and head coaching duties. Give yourself a grade. Tell me how you feel about how you did this season. He said, Ken, he's like, man, I'm tired, man. I took a lot. It was a lot. It's a lot to be a head coach and offensive coordinator, man. So those who do it well, doff their hat off to him. But maybe, just maybe in year 3, he may decide to designate a little bit more of that duty unto someone else in hiring an offensive coordinator. Not sure how he'll do it, but that's what I've seen. I've seen more of a servant leader and more of a players coach that's intense, and he has officially set the culture of Jackson State football. And I'm telling you, man, it's a new day in Jackson, and everybody is loving and smelling this. They smelling the breeze, man, that's passing through. It's no longer a stench. It smells really good right now, and we're super excited that Coach T.C. Taylor is the leader of Go JSU Tigers football.
Yeah, I had a couple questions about T.C. Taylor. I had questions about his comfort. I had questions about the play calling, but you answered it. You answered all of those things within it, because these are some of the things that I wanted to know. Some of the things that I were looking for when talking about T.C. Taylor from year 1 to year 2. So you see the comfort, and I'm sure you feel the brotherhood that you speak about pretty early into the season. But at what point do you feel like, all right, we're special, right? Like, I don't know if you felt it at the beginning of the year that the Celebration Bowl was within reach. I don't know if it took a couple of weeks, but there had to be a point where you knew it's not just within reach. It's not fingertips. It's right here. I can grab this Celebration Bowl.
It was at the beginning of the season. And I know people say, oh, he's a JSU guy, so he's going to say that. No, I'm telling you, it's documented. You can go back to our lives on KC 1400 Media, and I'm telling you, at the beginning of the season, I've been there, Darrion. I've been there for spring camp. I've been there for summer camp. I've been there for the fall camp. I've seen it all. I've seen the work that was put in there, and I also have kept up with I got a really good temperature of what was happening around the conference. Yeah, all I focus on is Jackson State, but I'm a big recruiting guy. I pay attention to the Jims and Joes that are being brought into onto each roster. So when you look at a coach that has recruited the top HBCU class year 1 and year 2, I'm looking at the dudes that he brought in. And I left out a key coach. I left out Coach Callie James that he brought in, who is just a master motivated and amazing young coach, and other coaches. I don't want to leave anyone out. But I will say this, though. Looking at that roster, looking at that team, looking at them prepare, I said, this team is different, man. This is a different type of team. I was around when Coach Prime had those successful teams, and we analyzed it, and those teams looked eerily similar to the teams that won SWAC championships. Now, with that being said, I felt like we had a chance to beat ULM going into that game. I felt confident looking at what they did, but I also was like, I was optimistically resistant to just say, I'm going to say we're going to win. I'm always give a Jackson State going to win score, but at the beginning of the season, I said, I think we finished 10-2. I said, I think we finished 10-2. I counted ULM as a loss, and I counted Grambling as a loss, and I'm going to tell you why. Grambling is just a psychological mud pit for Jackson State. Historically, we just don't play well in the hole, and I don't care how good the team is. I don't care. Robert Kent goes to Grambling and throws 4 or 5 interceptions. It's just the most goofiest day, man. We go to Grambling and we just gift them 21 points. It was so JSU in Grambling-ish. I don't know why. I don't get it. But I also do, you know what I mean? Just the history of that rivalry. They are one of the only schools, I think the only school that's got a lead, a head-to-head lead against us. I think Southern had it, but we've been beating Southern quite a bit. And I think with the SWAC championship, we either tied or we took the lead. I want to say we may have tied, but Grambling has a substantial lead on us. So at the beginning of the season, I was like, I see us going 10-2. Win the SWAC championship. This is Celebration Bowl. But I will say this, though. Seeing the adversity, we knew adversity was going to strike. We knew we would have some moments. That moment that we beat Alabama State in Montgomery, I said this team is – because that game was an ugly game that we had to win. We had to rely on – the offense wasn't clicking. We averaged 37 points a game. We got 16. You know what I'm saying? The defense got to win it. And seeing us win in multiple ways, I said, man, this team is special. And I'm just telling you now, this is our year. And I wholeheartedly feel, I know I've heard everything, but it won't help them on Saturday, man. This is our year. Jackson State will be Celebration Bowl champions. We will be national champions at the end of the season, at the end of the when the clock strikes 0 on Saturday, man. So I felt like I knew that this team was a special team at the beginning. I just needed to see certain things play out, Darrion, and they kind of played out the way that I figured that they would. I'm not always right. I'm wrong often, way more often than I am right. But when I'm right, I'm just saying, hey, that's what I said in the beginning, and I felt that way.
Look, I'll tell anybody who ever wants to get into this. If you talking sports on camera, you better treat your takes like it's being at bat. You gonna miss more than you gonna hit, but how many home runs you gonna get? Right, like that's the way that you gotta look at it. Because if you talk enough, if you talk enough, you talk about enough things, it's just that's what it's gonna be.
The beauty of it, Darrion, is going into every game, you got a 50-50 chance of being right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Half cup. Or cup half full. There we go. Cup half full. I love that. Let's get into your opponents. South Carolina State is going to be a tough one. I want to break down some of the best parts of their team and what you feel like the biggest challenges are for JSU as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Maybe you're an expert in football, maybe an expert in basketball or tennis or hockey or baseball or whatever your sport of choice is, and some of those have collegiate and professional ranks that you can make some money on. You go ahead and make that money at FanDuel.com. If you're new to FanDuel, put down a $5 bet. If that wins, you'll get $150 back in bonus bets. You just have to go to FanDuel.com to give yourself an opportunity. If you make it, or excuse me, if you make that $5 bet and it wins, once again, you get $150 back in bonus bets. Doesn't matter if it's in football, pro, college, basketball, pro, college, hockey. Do they have college? They got college hockey. Tennessee State's going to have a hockey team this year. So you got it all. You got it all. You feel like an expert. You feel like you know it. It doesn't matter if you catch it before the game, during the game. It doesn't matter if it's players or if it's teams. You go to FanDuel.com, make every moment more, and take advantage of that potential $150 back in bonus bets if you put down a winning $5 bet. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. I got KC 1400 here with me, breaking down Jackson State. We've looked at the team, we've looked at the coach. Now let's look at the opponent. I want to look at the matchup a little bit and ask this question. You played South Carolina State in the SWAC MEAC Challenge last year.
Yep.
Does that erase the idea of this being a lick back game, right? Where it's like, all right, we're going to get our lick back for back then. And even then, a lot of the players aren't even there. So I don't know. I want to get your mentality on that.
No, 2 different teams, 2 different teams, 2 different coaches, 2 different philosophies, 2 different rosters. They may feel like they want to get their lick back, but at the end of the day, both teams could draw. If you need to pull from that, you can. If Jackson State wants to say, I want to get my Celebration Bowl lick back, cool. If South Carolina State says, I want to get my MEAC SWAC Challenge last time we played lick back, they both can say that. But at the end of the day, that was a Coach Buddy Pugh's team that roster wasn't as talented as this roster is currently, and that team wasn't as good as this team. So, and neither was our team as good as this team is. This team this year would beat our team last year, in my honest opinion.
Right. So, okay, now let's move into the actual game, right? Because I view it kind of similar to you. I'm on the fence with it being a Celebration Bowl itself. Because I had your opinion going into the SWAC MEAC Challenge. So, anyway, when you're looking at the matchup between the trenches, I feel like as many stars as there are at the skill player positions, this battle of trenches on each side of the ball is going to be very interesting. So I'll ask you this. Whose battle is more important to win? Jackson State versus Jackson State's offensive line versus South Carolina State's defensive line, or Jackson State's defensive line versus South Carolina State's offensive line?
And I feel like it's pretty they both is equally important to me. And here's why I'll say it this way. First and foremost, I feel that the offensive line has to beat their defensive line. Here's why I say that. We cannot get into a situation where we can't score points. We need points on a team that scores quickly. They can score. They can fill it up, man. You know what I mean? So we want to make sure that and then too, let me say this too. We run the ball more than we pass.
Yes.
One of the advantages of being a heavy run team is the ability to control the clock. Now, we were the worst in the conference because we scored fast. You know what I'm saying? So, same time, but in a game like this, when we need to be able to sustain some drives, and we need to be able to wear them down and keep their offense on the sideline. You got a high-power offense. Let's make sure that they love their coach and keep them on the sideline. So you sustain drives, you nickel and dime your way down the field. I don't know if that's what we'll be doing, but what I will say is this. I think the offensive line is definitely – it's going to be key because here's the issue you're going to run into. Our defensive line win some battles, lose some battles. The DBs are going to be the ones that are going to have their work cut out for them because they got a daunting task with a really good wide receiver core. So with that being said, you still got to cover. You get what I'm saying? The D-line could do everything they want to do, stop the run game, and then he could just torch you from the passing game. So my point is you don't want to get behind and then you can't really move the ball because your offensive line ain't really creating holes and not winning their one-on-ones up front. So I would edge and say that our offensive line beating their defensive line is probably more important than our D-line beating their offensive line, even though I feel like both of them are just equally important.
Yeah, they're extremely important. Now, I have that in my question too, right? I'll give my side of it a little bit. I agree with you. And the reason why is because I put so much pressure on the defensive backs. And you speaking about how fast they get the ball out in the passing game to neutralize the defensive line. That's why I look at your offensive line and how much you want to run the ball as the more important battle by a very small margin. But I do have it as the bigger battle. But you spoke about the wide receiving core, right? They are extremely talented. 3 of the guys who can torch you. I genuinely believe they have 3 guys who could be lead receivers with how productive that they are. I think that is one of the biggest challenges. Do you feel like that's the biggest challenge for Jackson State?
Yes. Short and sweet. Yes.
Simple.
Our biggest challenge is going to be the wide receivers that they have. That those guys are talented, man. Those listen, man, I'm a big fan of number 0, Caden High. I mean, he is he's a special talent. They go to him quite often. But another home run is Enaj Carter. Carter is another one, and then of course Justin Smith Brown. Those young men are ballers, man. They are, and Eric Phoenix does a really good job. I know he's been banged up a little bit. I think they had more than enough times for him to heal up. If it was something that was returnable and not something that required like surgery or anything like that, he should be good to go. But with that being said, man, I think our biggest challenge is going to be our DBs versus their wide receivers, because throughout the season, our DBs have given up some plays, but lately. I just want to reiterate this while everyone's talking about our DBs. Robert McDaniel is a dude. He had a monster SWAC championship game, won defensive player of the game. But I will say this too, though. Our defense has only given up 13 points in the second half since the FAMU game. Literally 13 points. That's a touchdown versus Alcorn. That's a field goal versus who's the field goal for versus? I forget.
Southern got a field goal at some point in that last half.
I think it was Alcorn. Was it Alcorn? Somebody got a field goal. No. Correction. No, it was Alabama State with the touchdown, Alcorn with the field goal, Southern with the field goal. So 13 points. That's what it was.
Second half. I think that's a powerful stat, and we're going to walk out with that one. We're going to walk out with that one. Good luck to Jackson State. Good luck to South Carolina State. Tomorrow, for all of my listeners and viewers, we will be breaking down this game together. We isolated each team. Yesterday, South Carolina State. Today, Jackson State. Yesterday, Kobe. Today, Ken Clark. I appreciate everybody joining. I appreciate you for coming on. Tell them where they can find you at, please, Ken.
Hey, you can find me on X or Twitter or IG at KC1400MG. You can also find us on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. During the football season, obviously, it's Saturday mornings, but at KC1400 Media. That's KC-1400 Media. And you can visit us on our website, KC1400media.com. And I appreciate you for having me on. Tell Kobe I got a T-shirt for him, a JSU Tiger T-shirt for him to put on after he can celebrate with us when the game is over.
I'll look forward to that video. But I appreciate you. Appreciate everybody. We'll be back tomorrow, and I have another special guest, Aaron Webb, joining. We want to get that X's and O's former player perspective, so we're doing that for the Celebration Bowl. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.
Peace out.